California seed libraries in 2016. And I just wanted to give you a quick picture of what was going on at that time in California. So I interviewed 45 seed librarians and some people who were running organizations that were similar to seed libraries. They might not have called them that. Uh, just to give you a feeling, on average, each of these libraries were offering about 43 species of plants, about 128 varieties. They were getting most of their seed from commercial seed providers, especially places like Baker Creek or Seed Savers Exchange. Um, and they were also providing a lot of seeds. So they had an average of 177 people borrowing seeds from them every year, about 11 people on average returning seeds, leaving a pretty low overall seed return rate. But that's not a surprise, I don't think. Annually, there were about 231 seed packet equivalents that were going out from each of these, and they were making most of the seed that they received from people who returned seed directly available to other borrowers. So clearly a lot of activity going on, a lot of seeds being moved around. And then what were the goals, or what are the goals of these seed libraries? So the primary goals that people told me about can be whittled down into these four categories, I think for now, the most important ones. So the first was education, and lots of people talked about the importance of education, of providing knowledge, recipes, guidelines, information about planting, about gardening, about crops, about pollination, about biology, doing trainings, all kinds of things. And I think it's valuable to note that it's really important to also have this educational component be open to a diversity of kinds of knowledge, and maybe even emphasize even more the opportunity for multi-directional learning. I know in the area where I live in Southern California, we have a lot of people here who spent the early part of their lives being professional farmers in Southern Mexico. And they're very, very knowledgeable. And they have a lot to offer. And if we can create seed libraries as a sort of node for exchange of knowledge like that, they can be even more powerful, I think, and even more inclusive of the diversity we have in our communities. And again, encouraging observation, experimentation, and collaboration to really explore the materials that we're making available would be really valuable. People are really focused on creating greater seed access, and they're incredibly successful at it. I think of those seed libraries that I talked to, they distributed about 6,500 or over 6,500 packets of seeds just in that year. They're creating a lot of opportunity for people to access the benefits of food gardens. They're creating a more equitable access system for gardeners in different parts of their communities. And what I often heard when I spoke to people about increasing seed access was that, well, I can tell one story. In Southern California, a librarian had a seed library open for 2 years, and she didn't get any seed returns. And so the library administration said, well, this isn't a success, so we need to close this seed library. And they did. They closed it because they didn't get any seed returns. But I think it's really valuable to step back and think about what really is a good indicator for us if our goal is to increase seed access, to make seeds more available to more people in the community. Because honestly, we don't know what happens to those seeds after they're borrowed. So it would be nice to sustain the seed library, to have seeds returned, But that's not happening, but it doesn't mean that seed access is being ineffective and that gardening isn't occurring after people access those seeds. And it doesn't mean that those seeds aren't continuing to move through the community. So maybe looking for other indicators of success so people aren't discouraged if their seed library doesn't have high rates of return, and also looking for other ways to support the seed library, um, working with farmers, working with other growers who are more able to supply seeds to the seed library would be another helpful strategy. So one question I have for you all on chat would be, what are your goals as seed librarians or seed activists? Do they include these, or are they elaborations of these, or are they different? It would be great to know and great to let everyone else know. So you can just type that into the chat box. So, checking. So the other two goals of the seed libraries I spoke with were really biological goals. And these are very challenging, especially at the scale of gardens. So one of those is protecting, conserving, or even increasing crop diversity. And the idea here is to maintain variation that can respond to changing conditions and these kinds of trends that I spoke about. The other primary goal was adaptation, creating or finding or multiplying crop varieties that have that are particularly well suited to our environments and well suited to the cultural interests of our communities as well. But the thing is that if you're talking about a crop population, there is a trade-off between these two goals. The more diversity you get in a population, the less you'll get specific adaptation to a local environment. So if you think about it, adaptation means eliminating the variation that's less well suited to your environment. So you have more diversity, you'll have less specific adaptation. You have more specific adaptation, you're going to reduce the amount of diversity that you have available in that crop population. And this was something that was made really, really clear to me when I was working in Nepal. So this is my colleague, Ram Rana, interviewing together with me a rice farmer in northern Nepal outside of Pokhara. And this woman is an expert farmer. She has multiple terraced fields. She grows a number of varieties of rice. And I asked her about what kind of varieties she liked, and does she like very diverse rice varieties? And she rolled her eyes and said, "Oh my God, that is the worst thing for me, because you get a lot of diversity and it means I have to go weed multiple times. It means the plants are different heights. It means it's harder to harvest them. It means it's more time altogether. And the last thing I want is diversity. That's poorly adaptive for me. I want my varieties to be really phenotypically uniform." So she made that quite clear. She's maintaining diversity at a different level in between these different varieties. But in terms of within a variety, she certainly did not want diversity in her rice varieties. So we have this dilemma with diversity and adaptation, and these as being goals for seed libraries, which operate at the level of gardens. Right? So this is a dilemma that basic concepts can really help us with, I think. So just drink of water quickly. So to expand our response capacity, what are some seed library practices that can build on the processes that really determine crop diversity? So there are 4 processes that affect the diversity of all living organisms. One is mutation, which we don't have any impact on as gardeners. The others are gene flow and selection and genetic drift. So we'll just talk about gene flow and selection. In this case, gene flow merely means the movement of either pollen or species or varieties into new environments and their establishment there. So it can be pollen moving new genes into a variety's population. It can be someone bringing seeds from another location of a species that's not widely grown. You can see on the little map on the lower left is a sort of story of papalokelite that I grow. I grow 3 different populations of it. Uh, 2 of them I traded with a gardener who I met here in Goleta, who is from Jalisco, and he brought seeds from there. One of them I brought from Oaxaca, and he also shared with me, Angel, the gardener's name is, he also shared with me a population of papalo that he got from another Mexican gardener. So there's a great example of gene flow or migration of new material into a new area. But it happens a lot. Anyone who grows maize is familiar with gene flow, how pollen can move between different varieties, and you'll start getting different colors, different cob forms and ear forms. So gene flow is nothing new to most gardeners. But in terms of seed libraries, it can have both potential problems, but it can also offer potential benefits. So the problem is, just as I was saying, when you get your 2 different maize varieties and you want to keep them separate and you get pollen flow between them and you start getting mixing. Um, but the potential benefit is that you can add new diversity, whether it's genetic or varietal or even species diversity into your seed library collection and what the community can grow in your area. And this is also including new cultural diversity, as in the case of papalo, growing plants that weren't available in the area that really have great cultural significance. So the seed library practices to discourage these problems are really well described and practiced, I think, by most seed libraries, efforts to plant things far apart, change the timing of when you plant uh, varieties that might cross-pollinate, for example. Those are pretty well established and described by most seed libraries. There are also these ways that you can encourage some of the benefits, and those I think can be explored even further, and that's part of the experiment that a number of seed libraries are already conducting. You can intentionally mix different varieties or different populations of a variety and select within those. You can obtain good, clean seed stock from other people locally who might have new populations or just a different population of something that you want to grow. Other gardeners, migrants, refugees, conservation organizations. The USDA can often provide some seed stock if you're conducting an experiment, even as a community group. Another strategy is to develop alliances, not only within your region, but across regions, because we know that with climate change, temperatures are going to be increasing and moving poleward. In other words, the temperatures from more southern latitudes are going to be moving north. In fact, the most recent USDA plant hardiness map shows that over 55% of continental US has shifted north 1/2 zone since the last map in 1990, which means they're getting a 1/2 zone warmer in over 55% of this country.